Hello and welcome to Citizen Digital News. At this hour, I'm Kevin Otieno. President William Ruto on Sunday urged opposition leader Raila Odinga to call off the ongoing anti-government protests, which were set to enter the fourth day on Monday today. In a televised address from State House, Nairobi, the head of state said he had listened to the opposition's demands, among which had been a halt to the ongoing recruitment of commissioners to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission (IEBC). We quote him as saying, "I have listened to the issues raised by my friend, the Honorable Raila Odinga. In times like these, it is not about who is right or who is wrong." On the reconstitution of the future Electoral Commission, the selection panel that is currently in office is a creation of the law that was passed by the two chambers of parliament. However, considering the matters raised by our friends in the opposition, I suggest a bipartisan engagement by parliament within the parameters of the law and the constitution, he added. On assembling of the new IEBC, I should say, the opposition has been accusing President Ruto of reconstituting the Electoral Commission, quote unquote, without consulting other stakeholders and interested parties. The head of state suggested that through the bipartisan parliamentary process, the IEBC selection panel and the future recruitment of its commissioners could yield, quote unquote, constitutionally and legally binding proposals. And we quote him as saying, "My suggestion is that this matter can be handled by Parliament so that we can agree on what the issue is and we can adjust as agreed and as necessary." Ruto, who was flanked by his deputy Rigathi Gachagua, said, noting that the protests over the last 2 weeks have led to the killing of 3 people, including a police officer, and injuring at least 400 others, Ruto said, "I urge my brother Raila Odinga to call off the demonstrations and to give this bipartisan approach a chance to take this country forward." Other issues the opposition has raised with the Kenya Kwanza administration include lowering the cost of living, alleged electoral malpractice, and vote rigging in the 2022 general election, as well as what they see as purported discrimination in state appointments. The opposition leader was himself set to address a press conference shortly after the president's speech. Raila Odinga calls off anti-government protests, but with a caveat. Opposition leader Raila Odinga on Sunday evening called off the bi-weekly anti-government protests, which were set to enter the fourth day on Monday. The Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition leader made the announcement in a press conference at his Capitol Hill office in Nairobi. It came just hours after President William Ruto's address, in which he called on the opposition leader to do so and give way for a bipartisan parliamentary process in the recruitment of commissioners to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission (IEBC), which is one of the issues the opposition had raised with President Ruto's administration. Odinga said the Azimio camp is ready for dialogue that will address the key issues they have raised. According to the opposition leader, the decision to call off the protests came after wide consultations, including with religious leaders, among others. And we quote him as saying that William Ruto has issued what I regard as an important statement. "We have met and listened to a lot of people, including religious leaders. They have implored us to give dialogue a chance," he said. "We acknowledge the olive branch on dialogue. This is a positive development. We agree to a balanced parliamentary proceeding co-chaired by both sides. This committee must be done immediately, including all arrests and prosecutions." Mr. Odinga also continued saying that the Azimio camp is prepared to resume protests if no meaningful outcome is reached within a week. And we quote him as saying, We emphasize that rights to assemble are anchored in our Constitution. We reserve our rights to call for demonstrations if there is no meaningful outcome. We will resume after 1 week, he said. Among the issues the Azimio camp wants addressed are around electoral justice, high cost of living, attacks on media, attack on democracy, as well as the alleged buying of MPs. On assembling of the new IEBC, the opposition has been accusing President Ruto of reconstituting the Electoral Commission without consulting other stakeholders and interested parties. You're listening to Citizen Digital News this hour with me, Kevin Otieno. President William Ruto said on Sunday that the government has no plans to gag the media or shut down the internet ahead of Monday's anti-government protests. President Ruto told the nation from State House, Nairobi, that Kenya has already passed the point where the media can be turned off. He appeared to allay the Kenya media sector working group's concerns about alleged plans to gag the media, shut down internet services, and plunge the country into information darkness. Just for the record, we quote him as saying, "Take it from me, Kenya has come a long way. The era of switching off this or that is way behind us," he said. And he continued saying, "I have said that we will support the right of the media to carry out its function. You have our absolute support. Irrespective of how biased you are against us, we will support you." At the same time, the president stated that the media has put him in a difficult position, but there are no plans for a media blackout. And we quote him as saying, "If we exchange positions, if you stand where I'm standing, you guys would have switched off the media. But us, we will not." During his speech, President Ruto also urged Raila Odinga, the opposition leader, to call off the planned protests. According to the president, the majority of the issues raised by the former prime minister can be addressed through a bipartisan parliamentary process. And that's the latest.